Hey guys, welcome to this Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. My name is Devin Sherry, and what we're going to work on today is mouse interactions with our blueprints that we make in our game. So basically, mouse interactions mean being able to click on objects and have events fire, or have the mouse hover over an object and have events fire, or even when it moves all away from the object, like as soon as it loses its collision with that object to do stuff. So that's what we're going to go over today. There's going to be a couple parts in this series, so each chunk is going to be giving you a little bit more information to progress than the next. So let me first show you the final result. We have my scene here. We have three different buttons here. We have a time trials, a classic mode, and a waves mode. These basically represent three different game modes that would exist in a game. And all this comes from my game that I made called Radial Impact. But we're not going to go into that too much detail. We're just going to start and show you how we can create what we're going to show you here. So let's hit Alt and then P, and we'll go into the game. And right now it's just a blank background where we can see these three buttons. And if we hover over each one, they each light up. And then if you left click on one, it gets bigger, like you know you're selecting it. So that's what we're going to work on, just having this interaction. And then from there you can have it fire the actual game mode. You can have it do whatever it is that you want to do. So we're going to start all this from scratch. We're actually going to create a whole new project. We're going to set up the game modes. We're going to do all of that. So let's first start by creating the project. What we need to do, just pull up the Unreal Engine 4 launcher here. And right now I'm using Unreal Engine 4.6.0. So all you really have to do is just select that. And then it's going to open up that version of the editor. So I'll let that load. Once that loads, you'll be put into the Unreal Project browser here. From here, this is where you can choose whichever project you want to open up with this version of the editor. So we're going to go to the New Project tab. And for right now, we're just going to do a blank project. We don't have to do anything extravagant. And what we're going to do here is change the name of the project. We'll call this Mouse Interaction for right now. And we want maximum quality, desktop, console, and we want to start with the actual starter content. So let's create the project. It takes a little bit to save everything and set up the project accordingly, so it may take a couple minutes. So I'll see you back when everything's started and loaded here for us. So once the engine actually loads the editor here, you're given a default scene here. Has a player start, has a sun, skybox, sound, these chairs, has a reflection actor. So we don't want to use this level. We basically want to create a default level. So what we can do is just go to File, New Level, and I like to just do an empty level. And right from the get-go, I like to save this level. I'm going to call this, let's just call this main underscore mouse interaction underscore level. So you can name it whatever you want, but that's how I'm naming it. And by default, you're given your viewport editor here. We can split it up into 4 or bring it back to 1. For right now, we're just going to have to deal with the main viewport. We don't have to split it up. And then you have your content browser on the side here, but I like to make that as its own tab at the top. I feel like there's no reason to have it on the side, but that's just me. So what I like to do first and foremost when I create any kind of project, I like to set the default level I'm working with as the default level editor level. So how we can actually set that up is if we just go to our project settings under Edit and then Project Settings. Let me tab that as well. I like to go to where it says Maps and Modes. And right here at the very top it has a section that says Default Map for the game and Editor Startup Map. I like to set those both to the level we just made, so main underscore mouse interaction underscore level, or however you named it. That way, if you come back to this project and you open up the project back up, it will open up this level by default. So now that we have that going, what I'd like to do first and foremost is create some of the blueprints that basically set up the back end of our game and our player in our game mode in general. So let's first go ahead and do some folder management. Let's create some content folders just to make our lives easier. So on the game folder with that highlighted in our content browser, let's right click, do new folder. I'll call this mouse interaction underscore content. Just remember when you're naming these things, you can't use spaces in the folder names, so just keep that in mind. And for right now, we'll create all the folders we're going to need just in general for the whole project. So let's first create the blueprint folder. Just right click on that, name it blueprints. Then we're going to make a new folder, call it textures. Create a new folder again, call it materials. And then last but not least, we'll make a new folder and we'll call it static meshes. And so for right now, we're going to start with our blueprints folder. So with that blueprint folder highlighted in this gray area, let's go ahead and right click, do a blueprint. And the first one we'll make, we'll start with the pawn. So select pawn. And I'm just going to call this BP, so blueprint underscore mouse interaction underscore pawn. And this is basically going to be a representation of basically what our player is going to be. So let's double click it. And if you notice when we first played it, we're basically just a camera actor, and that's all we basically need. So let's go to add component, and then there's a camera section right here, and then there's an object that says camera. So we'll add that, and we'll name the variable player camera. But besides that, that's all we need. So we'll hit compile and then Control S to save, and we can move on to the next blueprint we want to make. So the next kind of blueprint we're going to work with is the player controller. The player controller is basically a blueprint class that basically gives us the functionality of how the player can interact with objects, with the world, things like that. So let's right click back into our blueprints folder, of course. We'll select blueprint, and right here we have an option for player controller. So let's select that. We'll name this BP underscore mouse interaction underscore player controller. Hit Control S to save, and let's double click this guy. And the default, it has a camera in there, but we don't really need to worry about that. All we're going to focus on is the defaults tab, and this is where we get some default abilities and options for our player controller. So right now, all we're going to focus on is the mouse interface. This is where you can choose to show the mouse cursor. This is where you can enable click events. You can enable touch events if you're using a mobile device. This is also where you can enable mouse over events and enable touch over events. So this is where we're actually to make the most changes. Everything else is going to stay default. So the first few things that we're going to do, we're going to check the option that says show mouse cursor. That way when we play in the game, you actually see your mouse cursor, you see where it's at. We're also going to enable click events, so that way we can have our objects recognize when they're clicked by the player. And then we're also going to enable touch over events. That way our objects can also recognize when the player's mouse is hovering over. So that's all we really need to set up for this. It's pretty simple. So let's hit compile, hit Control S to save, and we can exit out of our player controller. And now all we really need to do is set up our game mode. So let's right click, hit blueprint, and there's a game mode option here. We'll name this BP underscore game mode. I'm sorry, now BP underscore mouse interaction underscore game mode. Hit Control S to save that. And we're going to double click on it. And again, we're not going to focus on the components or the graphs. We're going to focus on the default settings. And this is where we can actually set up our default HUD class. We can set up our default player controller class and our pawn class, any spectator class, any game states, anything like that. So this is where we're going to actually implement the two other blueprints that we just made, the player pawn and the player controller class. So for default pawn class, we're going to throw in BP underscore mouse interaction underscore pawn. And then for the player controller class, this is where we're going to put in our BP mouse interaction underscore player controller. And that's really it. So let's hit compile, hit Control S to save. Now all we really need to do, back into our main level editor, we have a settings cog up here. So let's go to World Settings, and we're going to set it up so our game mode is actually being used. So in the World Settings, there's a Game Mode tab or subsection here, and there's a Game Mode override. Right now it's set to none. So let's set that to BP_mouse interaction _ game mode. And also at the same time, let's go back to Edit and then our project settings. Let's go back to Maps and Modes. And there's actually a section here that says Default Modes. We can actually set the default game mode to BP_mouse interaction _ game mode. And we see that it actually uses our default pawn class, and it uses our player controller class that we made as well. So we can Control S to save. And now all we can really do, just for, I guess, any kind of proof that we see that this is working, let's go into our content browser. Let's go into the starter content folder and then the shapes folder. Let's just grab a shape here. Let's add it to our scene. And then we also need a light. So let's add a light. And you can add a light how I did. I hold down the L key and then I left click on the scene and it generates a light for me here. Or you can go over here to these object tabs for the modes. And one of the default options is lights, and you can just take a point light and drag it in if you'd like as well. So all we need to do now is go over here for the basic tab. Let's grab our player start. And this blue arrow represents the direction the player is going to be facing, so we want to rotate this 180 degrees so he's looking at the capsule. And now if we hit Alt and then P, there's our view. Right now we have a lighting error just because we didn't build lighting, but we see that we have the mouse, we see it right there. We see we're in a camera view because we just have the camera as our pawn. And we have no ability to move, which is fine. We don't really need to have that ability for what we're doing. But now we have that set up. Basically now we can move forward into the next tutorial, which will be about adding in the texture content, creating the materials and static meshes for our buttons. And then from there we can create the blueprint. So I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.